I was a clinical social worker, and I finished graduate school in '79 and was doing adoption work, and my son was a teenager, and he was beginning to have more symptoms of a mental illness. He had schizophrenia. I was in California. We went through a lot just getting him diagnosed. Wasn't diagnosed until he was 19. I couldn't share with my coworkers that I had a son with a mental illness because I thought they would think I couldn't be a good therapist or a good clinical social worker, because if I couldn't fix my own family, then I couldn't help others.
Well, I remember feeling a lot of guilt and shame and blame, and we were called the schizophrenic mothers. And I bore that proudly and alone. We had a therapist. We were doing family therapy. My son was born in 1961. She said, there's a new lady in town and you need to meet her. Her name is Stella Edge. She later became Colby. And she was starting Beth Haven, a boarding home for people with mental illness. But she also was interested in helping families to cope. And so we teamed up, and we already had a little REACH support group going in town. REACH meant reassurance to each. And Stella, I remember her saying, I don't want this support group to just be people commiserating. She said, we have to collaborate and
Get something done.
yeah. My mother was the hospitality committee. She brought cookies and my dad made coffee at the meetings.
Where did you hold the meetings?
We were at the senior center.
At the senior center.
Uh-huh.
In Hancock?
Yeah, that's about to be torn down. But we had the support group at Stella's house. She was dynamic, and she just made everything work. Yeah.
Joyce herself would instruct us on a weekend on how to present family to family. And then we were given materials and said, take this back and start family to family. Well, Julie and I, we thought, well, that sounds pretty easy to do. I mean, really. Well, we had a hard time finding a place that we could hold it. We went to several places, and for various reasons we were turned down until we went to All Souls Unitarian Church. And All Souls told us, they said, well, you can have it here, but the only place we have available is this room downstairs that the children go to Bible study while we're having our service upstairs. And so we said, we'll take it. So this was little baby chairs, little for children chairs and tables in primary colors, red and blue and yellow. And we held our first class in that room.
So what were some of the hurdles you all faced when you first started the organization in the Springs?
Some hurdles?
Yeah, it's like challenges starting up a new organization.
Well, the baby chairs and the baby
besides
table.
the baby chairs, I guess.
It was a little bit of a challenge, but
I think I more remember milestones than hurdles.
I think stigma was.
Stigma? Stigma was terrible, and I remember I went to, it's the only national convention I've ever gone to, but it was held in Boulder in 1988, and Dr. Torrey, E. Fuller Torrey was there. He wrote a book called Surviving Schizophrenia, and I remember him making this statement, mothers are off the hook. Yes. And I remember I felt so liberated. It was really a stunning moment.
But there was still the stigma. There's still stigma today.
yes.
You probably know that if you've been involved. But I see it as being less. There's a more openness, and that stigma. We want to reach out to people that are beyond our area of expertise. I feel like we're all experts in this game. We've all been through something, and we know a lot, usually, that we can teach other people.
As a Hispanic, right, Puerto Rican Latina, we don't talk about these things in our homes, right? I don't remember ever growing up and hearing about anxiety or depression or mental illness as a whole. I remember growing up in a very religious home where, you know, let's pray, like you were saying, Bob, earlier, let's pray over this. But currently, right, one of the things I love to do is educating the Hispanic population about NAMI, about anxiety, about depression, about mental illness, right? So it's not something that we fear, but we gain knowledge of and seek help and support of, right? My personal experience with my son when he turned 13 and was diagnosed with psychosis, I have to say, I was scared at first, very scared, because Hispanic, again, right? What are we gonna do? What are people gonna say? What did I do wrong? Going back to that mother. And we're talking about, you know, this was in 2012. So not so long ago.
My loved one is my daughter who's in her 50s now. Julie and I got together back around 2000 and she told me, and I was so relieved that there was a place because no one else in the family wanted to talk about it, and I could see what was going on. My daughter has an IQ of 150. When she was 3, she was reading first grade books. When she was 9, she Dewey Decimal coded every book in the house. And yet, there were outbursts. And so bipolar and borderline personality disorder became her diagnoses. But Julie's the one that got me there. And I just gravitated. All of a sudden, I learned something about the brain. I learned that it wasn't my fault. And NAMI taught me that, and I am extraordinarily grateful for that.
I think getting involved with NAMI made it so I wasn't getting mad. Because you're angry at the situation, and NAMI kind of feathered that out. It just made me feel comfortable. It explained a lot of the stuff that was going on. It gave me the tools to deal with the anger that I had at the situation. You know.
And the stigma, like as someone who lives with a mental illness, like diagnosed with bipolar disorder, like the stigma for me was a really hard part of my recovery journey. I was in a lot of times denial. I was angry that I had this, and how is everyone gonna look at me? Like, it's gotten a lot better over the years, but it's still a large part. But going to a NAMI support group and seeing someone who was living a life that they were proud of with mental illness, with specifically having bipolar disorder, gave me a lot of hope to see, like, you know, the stigma is, there's a separation of that. There's what is actually happening with these families, these individuals living with this. And yeah, I'm kind of curious too of just like seeing what you all have felt with the stigma over the years. Like I have to imagine there's a lot of improvement, but it's still, you know, something we deal with even now. It's been a hard part of my journey with everything.
It always happens to somebody else. It's the other family until it happens to you. I'm originally from Pueblo, and Colorado State Hospital's down there. Those people were different, you know, and all at once, boom, you're right in the middle of it.
You were talking about stigma, and was it, a couple of years ago that the Surgeon General put out the report about how many teenagers, and then recently our governor has said something about any adolescent can get up to 3 free visits, but there's not enough providers to do that. And so people are becoming much more aware of mental illness and what perhaps are symptoms, but we still don't have the robust kind of treatment programs. And yes, we are devastated at times by our loved ones, but we have a place to go. We have a shoulder to cry on. We have someone that says, I understand.
You know, for so much of my life, I've been living this motto of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And a lot of times these steps back just felt harder and harder. And just hearing that peer model and like hearing like, oh no, you're not alone, and we're not gonna solve the issue, but like, I get what you're going through. Like, I go through this too. it was really moving for me, and like just getting on my path to recovery and getting to where I need to be in life and really kind of just making the most of it. I've always wanted to give back, and like there's been so many people along the way supporting me and my family, different individuals within NAMI and support groups, and just to be able to feel like I can give back and make an impact in any way is incredible. And there's still that stigma out there, and I like to think maybe I do like just a tiny bit to help with that each time, and maybe I can make one person think a little differently about what they hear on TV about bipolar disorder.
I would love to see a huge Hispanic outreach and Latino outreach where there's no more shame about talking about mental illness. I speak about my son's story with his permission, because I always ask for his permission, and I'm able to share this story and my experience with this story, right? Because I know that although it was very hard at that time, I believe it happens for a reason, so that as a Spanish-speaking person, I can go and share with other people and help them learn and be educated and not stay in this lonely place. I know what you're going through. I can help support you. Let's find other people. Let's spread the word, right? And in our language, even better.
There's a lot of volunteers during the day down at the office that answer 10, 12, 15 calls a day and just share what the resources are that are out there, getting it all out there. And I think I applaud the change from our grassroots, which was so important, to the fact that we're getting lots of corporate sponsors, because it requires that to spread the word to everyone.
You guys have said it all, I think, sharing and getting out there. And I would hope that one day there would be a place where people could walk around with mental illness and be accepted better without that stigma. And I think that by doing those things, by reaching out, by reaching more people, that's where we'll get to that place.
I think Stella Colby would be pretty proud of where Pammy has gone, and I don't guess I call mental illness a blessing by any means, but my son and my involvement with NAMI has brought me many blessings.
One thing you mentioned that I think is very interesting of like talking about mental illness being a blessing. Like I have had some really difficult, hard, I won't go into all of it, but had a lot of my life that's been really challenging because of mental illness. But I always say I wouldn't change it because it's given me so much perspective, appreciation, and getting back in ways like this it's really incredible. So
I'm just bonded to this community for the rest of my life.